I remember the exact moment everything changed. Not with a bang, but with silence. The kind of silence that feels alive. You'd think a place like Cheyenne Mountain, buried beneath tons of concrete and steel, would be untouchable, sealed off from anything the world could throw at it. But that night, something got in. The storm came out of nowhere. Winds screamed like they carried voices. Snow hammered the blast doors until they groaned under pressure. The entire mountain shuddered. The radio lines crackled with static, then died. Dead air. No sound but the wind clawing at the rock, and then a voice, clear, calm, whispering through the comms. "I see you." I don't know if anyone else heard it. No one said a word. Maybe it was interference. Maybe we all wanted to believe it was. In the military, you're trained to trust systems, to believe that procedure can fix anything. But when the lights flicker and the temperature drops 10 degrees in seconds, that belief starts to crack. There was a smell in the air too. Not oil, not ozone, something metallic like blood and rot. Wrong. And that silence, it wasn't just quiet. It pressed against your chest until your heartbeat sounded too loud. Still, we moved on. Because that's what soldiers do. You patrol. You check your gear. You don't say what you're thinking. But deep down, we all felt it. That creeping sense that something unseen was watching from the dark corners of the base. Looking back, I think that was the first test. Not of our strength, but of who we were. How long we could hold on to our sanity before it started peeling away. My name's Morales. Just another uniform assigned to Cheyenne Mountain, a fortress carved into the spine of Colorado. You've probably seen pictures. Endless steel corridors, thick blast doors, red emergency lights pulsing like veins under the skin of the earth. It was supposed to be a place of safety, of control. But buried miles underground, surrounded by snow and silence, safety starts to feel like isolation wearing a uniform. I wasn't special. Just a systems tech, 6 months into my rotation. The guy who keeps power stable, sensors aligned, and communications smooth. It wasn't glamorous, but it made sense. Predictable, controlled. I liked that. And the people? We weren't family, but we were something. Sergeant Avery, steady as stone. Wilson, the class clown, cracking jokes even when the alarms blared. Lieutenant Granger, by the book, but fair. We worked like gears in a machine until the gears started grinding. It started small. Things you'd miss unless you were looking too close. Lights flickering, a hum in the ventilation system that came and went like breathing. Radios cutting out for longer than they should. We chalked it up to the storm or aging systems. Because that's what protocol says. Find the logical answer. But logic only works when reality plays fair. Then one night, during a routine sensor check, I noticed a ventilation fan spinning backward. It was pulling air in, not pushing it out. Minor issue, right? I logged it and moved on. The next morning, thermal cameras in Corridor 6 read 0. No heat, no life. Not even residual warmth from the concrete walls. Like the place had been frozen for hours. I reported it. Command shrugged. System glitch. Reboot and move on, Morales. So I did. But the dogs knew. Base security kept 2 German shepherds, trained to detect explosives, gas leaks, anomalies. Every time we passed the old barracks wing, they stiffened, growled. Ears flat, eyes locked on something none of us could see. Once, one refused to move forward, whining, tail tucked. These weren't pets. These were combat dogs. They didn't spook. Then came the people. Not drastic changes, just off. Quieter mess hall. Fewer jokes. More eyes darting when someone walked by. One night, a tech named Carter snapped at me for asking a simple systems question. Then he just stared. Like he didn't recognize me. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just the base changing. It was us, and that's the thing about fear. It doesn't crash in like thunder. It whispers. You start second-guessing your memory. Was that door always open? Was that dent in the locker there yesterday? Why can't I remember what I ate last night? You tell yourself it's fatigue, isolation, cabin fever. But deep down, you know something else is wearing your face. It was 3:17 a.m. when the door opened. No alarm, no override. Just a soft hiss, like the mountain exhaled. And there he was, Sergeant Harris. Full gear, helmet on, calm, like nothing was wrong. Only problem? Harris had been dead for 2 years. I remembered his memorial, his photo pinned on the rec room board, his easy grin, the folded flag. Now he was walking toward us. Clearance code ready. And when he scanned in, it worked. The light turned green. The coffee in my hand hit the floor. My hand was shaking too hard to hold it. He knew all our names. Joked about drills. Remembered who bunked where. Everything. Perfectly. Too perfectly. His uniform was immaculate. His boots spotless. He never removed his gloves. Never touched a thing with bare skin. And when he laughed, it echoed, wrong, hollow, like it came from somewhere else. The dogs lost their minds, growling, snarling, trying to tear free from their handlers every time he came near. And that's when I realized the storm outside wasn't what got in. Something else had. We all felt it. That shift in the air, that quiet pressure in your skull that tells you something isn't right. But no one said a damn word. Because how do you accuse a man of not being human when he remembers your first deployment, your sister's name, your worst screw-up? You don't. You watch. You wait. And you pray to God you're wrong. So I watched Harris. Every breath, every blink. If he even blinked at all. And that's when I found it. During a system scan, I checked the thermal feed from Corridor B, the same hallway he always walked through on rotation. Every soldier glowed in red and gold. But Harris, nothing. Just a void. A cold silhouette moving through the heat like an absence-made flesh. At first, I thought it was a sensor glitch, until I noticed something worse. His shadow. It lagged behind him, half a second off, like it was being rendered, like whatever wore his shape hadn't quite mastered the timing of being human. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a man. It wasn't even pretending anymore. It was studying us and learning faster than we could react. And the worst part? We let it in. It didn't break through our security or hack our systems. It walked through the door, smiled, saluted, and said all the right words. And in that razor-thin space between logic and fear, we opened the gate ourselves. You think the military would jump into action. Lockdowns, red alerts, a full sweep of the base. But that's the real horror. When the threat wears a familiar face, no one sounds the alarm. Harris didn't hide. He blended. And one by one, people around me stopped being quite themselves. It started small. Simmons, our comms guy, the one who chewed gum so loud we threatened to tape his mouth shut, stopped chewing. Stopped humming his favorite AC/DC riff under his breath. One night he passed me in the hallway and nodded, a simple "what's up" gesture. Except it was wrong. Too smooth. Too deliberate. Like someone studying flashcards of human emotion and picking one labeled casual acknowledgement. He kept walking straight past his quarters without turning his head. Didn't even slow down. The next morning he was back in the mess hall, same seat, same coffee mug. But when Avery joked about the blackout, the one where Simmons screamed like a kid because a moth landed on his neck, he just stared. Blank. Like the words didn't mean anything anymore. That's when Avery and I knew. Simmons wasn't Simmons anymore. We started logging everything. Patterns. Routines, behavior changes, notebooks hidden in the conduit bay, passed between us under the guise of equipment checks. It felt like we were the only two left who still noticed. The others, they either didn't see it, or they'd already been replaced. Every discovery made the world around us warp a little more. Security footage glitched only when certain people passed by. Storage logs showed food being signed out by soldiers marked as absent. System diagnostics showed perfect data. Too perfect, as if someone was editing reality in real time. It wasn't messy. It was surgical. Then came Jenkins. 3 days missing, no official word. His bunk made, boots polished, gear perfectly arranged. Command said he'd been transferred to NORAD. Only, there was no record. No paperwork. But a man wearing his uniform was still walking the halls. Too tall, too stiff, too polite. Jenkins used to swear like a pirate and call everyone kid. This version said things like affirmative and understood, monotone, mechanical. That was when Avery finally said it. "This isn't possession," he whispered. "It's replacement, not ghosts, not madness. Something was taking people, copying them, wearing their faces like skin." We started digging. Old myths, deployment rumors, Navajo stories about skinwalkers, shapeshifters, memory thieves. Beings that learned you, wore you, became you. In Iraq, soldiers told stories about patrols where men came back quieter, colder, different. The thought clawed at me. What if Cheyenne wasn't a base anymore? What if it had become a feeding ground? Every hour we waited, another person vanished. And when they returned, they weren't empty. They were perfect. Too perfect. That's when we knew we had to act. Not because we were brave. Because we were next. The plan was simple. Suicidal but simple. Lure the thing, the skinwalker, into the old blast chamber. Seal it inside. Trigger a collapse using the abandoned fuel line. Crush it under the mountain before it learned to wear another face. Avery volunteered to stay behind and trigger the lock manually. He smiled, said, "You still owe me that beer, Morales." I nodded. Didn't tell him I already knew we'd never see daylight again. We baited it with a fake systems error. It took the bait, predictable, efficient, mimicking routine like it was born for it. But as it walked past me, I felt its gaze. Not suspicion, not anger, recognition. Like it already knew the ending. Then it happened. Harris's face flickered. Just once, but enough. And in that split second I saw it. Not one face, but many. Simmons, Jenkins, Avery, even mine. Like it was choosing its next skin, Avery slammed the blast door shut. The metal clanged like a coffin closing. I hit the detonator. The explosion wasn't fire and glory. It was pressure, a deafening crush of sound. Then silence. The mountain folded in on itself. Concrete shrieked. Steel twisted and Avery was gone. The creature too, buried beneath tons of rock and fire. I don't remember escaping. I think my mind broke it into flashes. Alarms, red lights, snow, the taste of blood in my mouth. By the time I surfaced, the world was white again. Quiet, still, but deep beneath the mountain. I swear I could still hear it, whispering, practicing another voice. I crawled through the collapsed service duct, my hands torn open, fingers stiff with cold and blood. Every breath came out in a fog that instantly froze in the air. Behind me, the mountain groaned and shifted, as if it wasn't ready to let me go, like it wanted to pull me back into its steel and stone belly, where it had already devoured everyone else. When I finally pushed open the hatch behind the auxiliary power unit, the one that was supposed to be sealed decades ago, I collapsed into the snow. The wind howled through the ridge, a wall of white swallowing everything around me. The blizzard wasn't just weather anymore. It felt alive, like it was part of it. Like the storm itself was trying to erase me before I could tell anyone what had happened down there. I had no map. No food, no sense of direction, just a torn parka, frostbitten fingers, and a head full of voices I couldn't silence. For 2 days, I stumbled through that endless white, half-delirious. Sometimes I thought I saw movement in the tree line, dark shapes pacing me at a distance too tall to be men, too fluid to be human. Other times, I heard voices calling out from the storm. Familiar ones, Harris, Avery, my mother, each voice begging me to stop, to look back. I didn't, because I knew if I turned around, I'd see their faces, and I didn't trust that they'd still be theirs. By the time I reached the listening post, I was barely alive. The world had narrowed down to a single sound, my boots crunching through the snow. I collapsed in front of the outer gate, and the last thing I remember was someone shouting my name, their footsteps crunching closer, and a face bending over me that, for a moment, didn't look like a monster. When I woke up, I was in a warm, sterile room. White walls, monitors beeping softly. The kind of place meant to make you feel safe. But nothing could feel safe after what I'd seen. They told me I was lucky to be alive. Severe dehydration, frostbite, mild hypothermia. They said my story sounded like the ramblings of trauma. And maybe it did. Because how do you explain that a dead man, Harris, had walked back into our base? How do you convince anyone that people were being replaced, one by one, perfectly replicated by something that wasn't human? The doctors didn't say it, but I saw it in their eyes, pity and a hint of fear. Then came Colonel Reeves. Calm, controlled, too controlled. His voice was steady, his questions precise, the kind that sound like they're meant to help, but are really digging for cracks in your sanity. I told him everything. The tunnels, the surveillance glitches, the blast chamber, the explosion. I even told him about Jenkins's tattoo, the little ace of spades on his shoulder, something no file could have told me. Reeves didn't interrupt. He just listened, expression frozen, eyes locked on me like he was studying a specimen. And then, when I was done, he said it. There's no record of any explosion in Cheyenne. No report of a storm that day. And Sergeant Harris, he paused, was never stationed there. The room went quiet. The air felt heavier, like gravity had just doubled. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Either I had completely lost my mind, or someone was erasing everything behind me, every name, every file, every trace that we ever existed. They placed me under observation, said I needed rest, that it was standard procedure. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was broken. But last night, I saw something. Through the reinforced glass of the observation window, I watched Colonel Reeves walking down the corridor toward the restricted sector. He paused at the security door, lifted his hand to the access pad, and that's when I saw it. His gloves, the same kind, the same matte black synthetic weave. He pressed his palm against the glass door. But there was no reflection, no breath fog, no condensation, nothing, just like Harris. And that's when I realized, maybe I never escaped. Maybe I just traded one mask for another. So if you're hearing this, if this message reaches anyone out there, maybe I didn't make it out alive. Maybe I'm already gone, and this is just it speaking through me. But if not, if there's still a chance you're human, remember this. When someone you trust walks into the room and everything feels normal, take a second look. Watch their shadow. See if it moves when they do. Because once it learns your face, it never stops wearing it.